Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Brock Beard from NASCAR.info. First of all, I just want to make sure we got doing something a little different here. I got a lapel mic here, so hopefully it's sounding a little bit better than we usually do when you use the webcam mic. Definitely let me know if we're having any issues with that so far. If you have any audio issues on this end here, but we'll certainly jump into the action here in all of its forms, including the fact that Kurt Busch now has unofficially victory at his home track in Las Vegas. So big congratulations to him. Bizarre set of circumstances that led to this particular situation there for Kurt. But regardless, a fantastic run for him and for the Chip Ganassi racing team. Can you guys hear me okay? We see 8 people in here so far. I haven't seen any comments yet so far, so I guess we're doing okay. All right. Well, yeah, I mean, where to even begin? Seemed like it was going to be the Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin show for a lot of this in the first part of it. And then Kyle Busch having the door banging event there with Joey Logano, and Logano apparently going to have a little bit more difficulty making friends going forward here with a bit of that going on. And Kyle dropping out of it, or at least dropping further back in the lineup. A great recovery for him, though, actually being able to get, I believe, a top 10 finish unofficially. So good turnaround for him. We get the results here unofficially. But you got to say, I mean, Kurt Busch, really, I mean, you think about the career that this guy has had, the fact that he's, he won his only Cup Series championship in 2004, all the different teams he's driven for, all these other efforts that, that he's tried to actually kind of win at his home track. His brother won, Kyle Busch won at Las Vegas in 2009, which was a surprising run that he had back then. One of his first runs for Joe Gibbs Racing. I believe he beat Clint Boyer and Jeff Burton in that one. The Childress guys had a good run. Unfortunately, didn't have a good run this evening here between Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon. Yeah, I mean, Kurt Busch, it's amazing that he hadn't won here before. Las Vegas still in now 26 races, at least unofficially, has not had a first-time winner. And again, all the previous winners had only been one of the Busch brothers there since then. So a good turnaround there. Sounds good? Okay, excellent. Good. I'm glad this is working. Hope to, again, trying to put some other effort into these streams here to get them a little bit easier for everybody to hear. So, yeah, I mean, my goodness, great run for Kurt. I mean, it really turns things on its head going into the playoffs. You can just see it, the unofficial rankings they showed for what? It's Boyer, Dillon, and goodness, the other driver further back there have a bigger gap that they now have to deal with going into Talladega and the Roval. It seemed like a 1.5 mile track was not really a gimme, but something where maybe the drivers have a little bit more that they control their destiny, and they definitely raced like that tonight. Alex Bowman seemed to have one of the best cars out there, one of the best runs he's had in a while. Of course, you think about his win at Fontana and other runs that he's had on the 1.5 mile tracks, rather. Obviously, Fontana being currently 2 miles around. But the runs that he's had at Kansas and Chicagoland in the past, we got another Kansas race for the next round here, but he's got to get to it first. Now he's got to be in a position to have to do as well as he's done on occasional runs in the super speedways. But again, certainly going to be interesting these next couple of weeks. If you have Talladega, where the big one could happen or could not happen at all, and you can have people running further back and not really have a chance to go for it. Or you can have a situation like a couple years ago where the Stewart-Haas team had all 4 of their cars run nose to tail and just dominate the rest of the field. You just really don't know what you're going to get. Whereas the Roval is going to have a situation where cars just fall apart because they're just, even after a couple runs at it, these cars don't seem really designed to handle the turtles and bouncing around on an infield road course and have a lot of trouble actually keeping something together on the track there. So that's going to be a difficulty there. Beast of Metal, thank you so much for the super chat right off the bat here. MBM was screwed by lap 25 as the Denver Broncos have been this year. Also, the race was dog, and NASCAR should feel bad about it. Well, I can take your point there to a degree. The first 2 stages and most of the third stage, there wasn't too much really to write home about except for the restarts there. The restarts themselves were exciting, but they always tend to be. Certainly when you had the cautions there, starting with, I believe it was Jimmy Johnson's tire failure there, it kind of turned this race on its head, and you didn't know which of these guys on older tires was going to be able to stay up there. versus others. I think this was a great race, quite honestly. It was definitely more compelling than some of these other ones that we've had, like Richmond and Kentucky until the finish, of course. But it seemed like they were really able to be, really aggressive, certainly at the start of the race and each of the segments there. But definitely Denny Hamlin seemed to have things pretty well in hand at the beginning, and Chase Elliott. But things didn't really stay that way through there. I mean, good strategies and everything that were playing out. It was good to see something shake out in that sense. So we'll see how things turn out. I mean, there's certainly better races out there, but I have to say that I'm certainly more excited for Las Vegas's place in the playoffs after seeing this race and the last couple we've really had. Even when it was double billed against the IndyCar finale back when it was at Sonoma, they had some great races out there, or Sears Point rather. Some great events out there. So I think it's worthy of its place in there. I think if we're looking at tracks that maybe need to be changed around, certainly Texas. I know it was a big discussion in our Wednesday show with the rumors about Circuit of the Americas and the All-Star race at Texas. A lot of discussion on that. But yeah, and you mentioned Hippie Two Sheds, mentioning Joey Logano here as well. I think that was a big part of it too. Logano was extremely aggressive at the start of this. The blocks that he was pulling on Chase Elliott and some of the other competitors out there, I think it seemed like it was going to get to a point where there was going to be a wreck. And we basically had one when Denny Hamlin was making that crazy move for the lead there. And Kyle didn't seem to know that he was there and got into Logano, and it really kind of hampered both of their days at the end of the run there. Logano very aggressive out there. Certainly something we're going to see a lot more of at Talladega next week. We've seen Logano and Chase Elliott, for that matter, be some of the most aggressive defensive drivers out there on the super speedways. And I don't expect that to change next week, especially since both of them are now in a position where they may or may not have to actually get a victory in order to make it to the next round, depending on how everything shakes out and if we have any pile-ups or not in that race. Then again, Chase Elliott seems to be really good at these infield road courses at the same time, not just winning at the Roval last year, but the Daytona infield road course. He had that very well in hand, even against Truex. We'll see how that shakes out, but I think that's going to be interesting going forward there. It's anybody's guess what we're going to get at these next two rounds. But one thing I'll mention on here, those of you who are in the Livestream, again, big thanks to all of you in there. We actually hit our first $100 goal again for a second time, and I decided to keep the same goal in there because things kind of fluctuated on there. Certainly anticipated that with things going on this year. But since we hit the $100 goal again, I left it open to the Livestream members as to when I was going to do another starting grid video, not counting the Daytona 500. I'm going to go ahead and do that one anyway next February. But if there was another one they wanted me to do at the end of this year, we had a few votes in there, and the winning vote was Talladega this weekend. So on this channel, there will be a starting grid video. Still figuring out what I'm going to do for the grid. But I'm thinking about doing something to tie in with Brendan Gaughan's last start, which is going to be with the Beard Motorsports team this weekend, the number 62 car, no relation. But that's going to be a video to look forward to on this, and we'll have that on here on the channel as well. Glad you like the Dogecoin shirt. Wanted to kind of shake things up here a little bit. Also, I have another thing that I brought here, another visual aid to go with this, because we haven't talked about the last place battle yet. And there's obviously a lot to kind of front load on this. Number 49 car finished last in this race with Chad Fincham. An unfortunate overheating issue had dropped him off the pace in the first 19 laps. His teammate Timmy Hill was behind the wall soon after with a fractured axle. So unfortunately, not a good day for motorsports business management. They always seem to be star-crossed at Las Vegas. Those of you who have been following the site for a longer time, you may recall the times that I was transcribing the issues that Joey Gase was having when he was driving the number 66 last year, and they were waiting for a crew member to come over from the hotel to the track and got stuck in traffic and ended up taking, I believe, about half of the race for them to actually diagnose the engine issue. This ultimately forced them to go to a different radio channel as I was transcribing it. And to this day, I'm still actually blocked on their Twitter account, which is unfortunate because I'd love to be able to get more updates on their team. Unfortunately, I have to do that through friend of a friend contacts there. And then races like this, it's even more critical to follow what's going on at the back of the field. I was really excited to see that they had two cars out there. We haven't seen that since the Daytona 500 when Chad Fincham was attempting the 500. Unfortunately, didn't have a very good run in that race. Ended up further back in the lineup, missing the 500. But it was good to see him back out there, as well as the throwback scheme that Timmy Hill ran at Darlington. They just changed the car number and a couple of sponsor logos around, And so we got to see Timmy Hill run the race in the James Carter attorney crash claims RS machine alongside Fincham. We haven't seen that. I believe when researching this, looks like that hasn't happened since Kansas last year in the spring, at least not in a points paying race. I believe they were both in the Winston Open last year, or the Monster Energy or whatever Open that they would even call it anymore, back when it was still at Charlotte last year. But a different situation with that, with the number 49 team. Sounded like the team was dealing with a lot of really unfortunate stuff there, where they just couldn't get the car back out there. About 20 or 30 laps into the race, they told Chad to get back out of the car. And so the number 49 ended up being unofficially your last place finisher. Timmy Hill was able to get back out there. Great effort by the Motorsports Business Management team to get their driver back out there. Much like we've seen with Rick Ware's team, and even Spire Motorsports immediately comes to mind. They just never say die out there and trying to get the best that they can out of a bad situation. But unfortunately, the number 49 still unofficially your last place finisher. And bringing to this visual aid I have right here, I mentioned that the last time the number 49 finished last was this team right here, the America Israel Racing Team. This was an effort that Jay Robinson, the previous owner of Premium Motorsports, collaborated with, I believe it was Tim Blakeney, I believe was his name, or Todd Blakeney. They were collaborating with each other and fielded the number 49 in there. The number 49 has come up a number of times in Robinson's history as either a Cup or Xfinity car, part-time or full-time. You may have remembered some of the cars that were sponsored by Royal Teak Furniture, but this was another one. I bought this shirt back in 2012, and it's got the logo for the number 49 team. And this was, as you can see with the signature, it's not a printed signature, of course. That was J.J. Yaley there that was driving it back then. It was pretty distinctive paint scheme that they ran back then. Actually made it all the way to Sears Point, but by that point, they were just running plain black cars in that one. This gold scheme didn't run too often there, but an interesting chapter in the sport there, and certainly going to be a feature in the article if it does turn out, in fact, that the number 49 is officially your last place finisher with Fincham, but definitely want to bring that up while still talking about that today. So we had that situation. Let's see. Yeah, the America Israel Racing Team. I don't remember exactly what the initiative was exactly for that, but those people talking about whether it's cars on whatever political aisle, as it's been discussed a number of times, it's nothing new. There's been ones in any number of years and so forth. And well, gosh, I guess 2012 was an election year too, so I guess you had that. So maybe that's just a part of the game there. Let's see, what do we have here? So we got to talk about, we got a lot to talk about from all of these. Matt DiBenedetto, I don't think we've even mentioned him so far in there. It really seemed like he was going to be in position to actually pull off the victory here. Regardless, a great run for him. I know that, obviously he's trying to get the very best out of that Wood Brothers team, trying to get them their 100th victory. He finished, I believe, second or third in the spring race here when Logano won it. And was able to survive an accident to kind of get back up there in the field when the race ended prematurely there. But another great run for Matt DiBenedetto. It seems like he's on the verge of being able to pull something off here. Maybe this Vegas track is something that he can kind of capitalize on top of what we've seen him do at tracks like Sears Point in the 95 car, or at Bristol, whether it was BK Racing or the Levine family team. But that was, close but no cigar. But maybe he can still steal away one here in these next few weeks, especially with these next couple of races being as unpredictable as they are. Although the playoff drivers are going to come loaded for bear, trying to shore up their spots in for the round of 8 to join Kurt Busch in there. Same time, Eric Jones, 8th place finish there. Great run for him. In talking about this, my brother here, I think that if I were to start a new Cup team and I had to pick the current free agents from it, if it was Kyle Larson or Eric Jones or any of these other ones out here, I think Jones would be a great pick. I think he is a lot of untapped potential out there. I think in a lot of situations, 9 times out of 10, and it could just be dumb luck or anything, but there's got a lot of driver's skill that keeps a situation like the one that he had with John Hunter Nemechek at the end of the race, being able to avoid that accident. Yes, he did end up causing an incident there with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and putting the 47 in the wall. But really, even then, it wasn't that serious of a damage to Stenhouse that he couldn't keep going at the same time. At least is what it seemed like from the running at the time. But, the lesser of two evils to prevent from colliding with the number 38 and destroying both their cars. Unfortunate deal for John Hunter as well. We've seen this with him at Talladega most recently. Actually, when he was drafting with Jones, seemed like they were going to be the ones that were going to pull off the upset there back in June. We'll have to see if they can kind of keep that going next week when they go into the playoff race there. Maybe they can mix things up there as well. And, of course, Matt DiBenedetto and that same Busch there. That'll be interesting. Chris Buescher, one of the Buescher. I always say Buescher all the time. I don't know why, but Buescher's run there seemed like he was going to get a good top 5 run there, especially when the cautions fell the way they did. Still unofficially in the 9th spot, finished ahead of Harvick, finished ahead of Keselowski and Logano. That's a really good feather in the cap there for the number 17 team. We saw his teammate Ryan Newman up there for a while as well. Great runs for them. I mean, my goodness. We saw Matt Kenseth up there for a little bit. The McDonald's car, unfortunately, the McDonald's curse still continues since 1994, so the watch will continue at least for another week. Kenseth was your last place finisher at Talladega the last time we were there in June, when he had perhaps the first, I think it was right rear hub issue on the number 42 that ended up dropping him out of the running and kept that going, hoping for better performances there in the ride that's going to now be Ross Chastain's next year, after all the news that we talked about during our midweek show the other day. If you haven't seen that, I know it was run at kind of an unusual time. Definitely check it out. It's on the channel here as well. Unfortunate deal for William Byron. Got a lot of damage there, but unofficially still shown on the lead lap. So a great effort by the Hendrick Motorsports team to keep number 24 on the lead lap, unofficially in the 25th spot. Christopher Bell, heartbreak for them. Just like at New Hampshire, where it seemed like they had a great run. They could actually be competitive for a top 5, if not an outside shot at victory. Ends up getting put into the wall off of turn 2. And then the car slows up in front of traffic there, causes another accident. Corey LaJoie gets collected in it. And LaJoie was also in the top 10 earlier in there, ends up getting dropped back. Both of them ended up further back in the order. Bell back in the 24th spot. And where was LaJoie? I think he was even further back. I don't think he was quite this far back. No, 27th. The second car 1 lap down behind Ty Dillon unofficially. So a different situation with that. Chase Elliott, 22nd spot. That's definitely not a reflection of how well he had performed through a lot of that race. Again, it just seemed like it was going to be the Hamlin and Chase Elliott show. But that's one of the greatest things about motorsports compared to stick and ball sports. You can have 2 people just completely dominate a race, and then something happens that kind of turns everything on its head. And we saw, kind of a theme of that this week, whether it was a tire rolling out on pit road or an accident happening in an inopportune time, and cautions falling in different ways. Obviously, this kind of leads us into our discussion about the Xfinity race there with Michael Annett. You had kind of an interesting situation from that. The Classic, you had a question about who I think that who's going to go to Aspire Motorsports since Ross is in the 77. It's a good question. I mean, it's a toss-up. I mean, obviously, with the investment with Rick Ware Racing and what's going to happen with Premium Motorsports, the Rick Ware merger, and how many more teams are going to still be there next year, that's really up in Rick's hands, really, at this point, I would imagine. Is he going to continue to run 4 cars? Is he going to cut it in half and just run 2? That's going to really change the complexion of how many teams are going to be out there and really where these charters are going. I mean, we discussed this, of course, with the Michael Jordan team and how many eggs had to get cracked to make that omelet, whether it was the sponsors from Petty Enterprises, the charter from Germain Racing, and the Toyota backing from Levine Family Racing. 2 of those teams get shut down. Who knows what's happening to the Petties next year? And then you have that whole situation from that. So, it's going to be a tough call on the 77, but I think that's going to be an interesting one to certainly talk about. Let's see. Kyle Larson's represented by Spire. I mean, that's possible. I mean, you never know. And certainly the discussion about the 48, I think one other twist that's getting thrown in here, and maybe this is why the Bubba Wallace deal with the Jordan team kind of came through the way that it did. Actually, it feels weird saying the Jordan team because then I'm thinking Formula One, but I guess that's probably the way it's going to be described here. That's going to be the situation with the cut in the amount of hours of wind tunnel time for Hendrick Motorsports next year. That penalty they incurred, I don't think that's going to be a small penalty. If they got a 10-hour cut from next year, that's going to be a serious disadvantage to Hendrick, who have already been fighting tooth and nail to try to keep up with either the Penske Fords or the Toyotas at Gibbs. It's been a challenge enough this year. And then they're going to lose Johnson at the same time, at least from full-time competition, as he goes into IndyCar next year. I think next year is going to be a very difficult year for Hendrick Motorsports unless they're able to really just gut out some wins, Harry Gant style or something, and just pull them off. I think that's going to be a factor also in the negotiations for the 48 team, is like what quality equipment are they going to be able to do? Now, Hendrick has, of course, tremendous assets and tremendous equipment and tremendous talent over there. We've certainly seen that from Chase Elliott, not to mention the other competitors there. William Byron now getting his first win, Alex Bowman into the playoffs, and who knows what that's going to be. But I would be very surprised if that wasn't a factor in why it's taken a little bit longer for us to hear about what's happening with that 48 and how things are going to shake out from there. So we'll certainly find out the days and weeks that are ahead. That's just my thoughts on that one. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't affect the next gen development, but again, to keep in mind, the next gen is going to be another year. So, who knows what it's going to look like for them in 2021. They still got to fill that gap before they get to 2022 and redevelop it. If they just want to put that on the back burner and just focus on the next gen and just get whatever they can get next year, I don't like to think of a concept of a rebuilding year in NASCAR, but perhaps it'll be something like that with Hendrick Motorsports. Now, it could be that maybe they don't need that much time, but then again, if they're running over the number of hours they were allotted this year, and good kudos to them for self-reporting and in the name of fairness and everything, especially if they knew that was the restriction. But at the same time, man, that's a heck of a penalty, especially for them coming clean. But I guess it's one thing that NASCAR is not messing around with, much like the size of the engine or fuel additives or things like that we've seen just absolutely crush teams. I mean, just ask Carl Long about something like that. It's been a difficult stretch for some of these. Let's see here. Looking at the rest of the running order there. Austin Dillon, heartbreaker for him. Looked like he had a good, solid run going. Same thing with Tyler Reddick. He had problems right at the beginning there. I mean, once he smacked the wall there, just kind of KO'd him out of the race there. Very uncharacteristic of Reddick in particular. We haven't seen him in too many accidents. The Bristol accident that he had where he left the track early is the one that kind of stands out in my mind compared to some of these other ones. But I think that was kind of a different deal there. That was a weird thing, too. I didn't mention this earlier with Fincham. I did mention it on Twitter. The Fincham was really complaining about issues with Josh Bilicki's number 53 car leaking fluid. Bilicki ended up finishing 41 laps down in 36. I don't know if he actually fell out of the race. I know that the 3 cars behind him were listed out of the event. Maybe Bilicki had a problem towards the end of it. But that was a concern that Fincham had before Fincham had his own problems. Whether or not that was a consequence of his overheating issue, this is unfortunately the problem of not being able to do much trackside stuff there. But this is definitely a venue that I'm kind of looking ahead to for next year or the near future to cover there. I think they put on a great show between these 3 events, and hopefully we can see something more like that in the not too distant future for these other competitors. But again, great job for Kurt Busch. Certainly, we'll see what happens in technical inspection later tonight. But pending that, otherwise, we have a good Chad Fincham article together to kind of follow up our discussion of him on the website after his disqualification at Richmond. We can talk more about his Cup Series side of it, even though this is only his second start. Still kind of interesting to discuss that at the same time. On the Xfinity side, this brings us to that and the other mystery caution that happened in that one with the tire rolling out of pit road that ultimately allowed Michael Annett to have a better finish than he probably would have had ordinarily. But finishing in the 7th spot for him. Ryan Sieg really being a big part of that story, even though he wasn't the winner, even though it was another Chase Briscoe win. And, kudos to him for getting that 8th victory that he was certainly striving for this year. Sieg having one of his best runs of the year, really since the other Vegas race this season. He's been so consistent, but he was absolutely racking up those playoff points there in those first couple stages. Still got a 5th place finish there, even on those long green flag runs. Pit crew was doing a great job out there. So big kudos over to the RSS racing team and the efforts that they've had on the 39 car. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the start and park efforts that they've had to help keep that run going, whether it's the 38 or the 93 or the other cars they've run on the side. Josh Bilicki, J.J. Yaley, and of course, the all-time last place leader, Jeff Green, driving those cars. It seemed like they always have drivers starting with the letter J running those. Maybe they should have called it RJJ Racing or something. But that's the situation that you had there. Unfortunately for the last place finisher, it was Mike Harmon Racing. Apparently, they were having sponsorship issues on top of their continuing search for the hauler that was stolen from them after the Daytona infield road course race. Kyle Weatherman classified last in this one with a bizarre steering issue that spun his car into the inside wall and actually blocked the pace car from going out on track. An unfortunate situation there for the number 47. Chad Fincham actually went behind the wall in the number 66 before the Sunday race, and apparently it looked like he was going to be out of the race, but actually came back out a second time, which was highly unusual for that start and park effort there the Motorsports Business Management team did, ultimately completing 36 laps before falling out of the race. But a big part of the Saturday race seemed to revolve around Vinnie Miller, who just had an absolutely unfortunate and miserable run there in the number 99 car there for BJ McLeod's team. The BJ's team has had so many great runs this year, but much like with Spire Motorsports, has been in a situation where they've had to kind of really patch together cars that are, struggling with situations at the very beginning of the race. You think back to Mason Massey's situation at Bristol, driving the number 99 car where they missed the start. I think they spent about half the race diagnosing the issue, but he actually got back out there and was actually able to climb out of last place. We had very much the same situation with Vinnie Miller, with apparent issues with the brakes that put him behind the wall. They had to bleed the system, pump the brakes, and basically had to keep making pit stops for more brake fluid for the rest of the night. Spent at least 3 stays behind the wall, ended up being black flagged for not maintaining minimum speed and fell out of the race. And even then, he finished in the 34th spot in the 36-car field. And that's really another reason I like following the back of the field here, because sometimes the effort just not to finish last, the effort to actually pass a couple cars if you can do it. And even though he's still shown as too slow in the results, that's not an indicator of what they were facing at this time. And certainly in races where you don't have practice in qualifying and you're in a situation where you really don't have much time to actually be able to prepare your car and do the best that you can. I know Kevin Harvick's perfectly happy they're not being practiced in qualifying. Why wouldn't he be? He's having one of the best seasons of his career with that now, thanks to that, especially ever since he won the first race back at Darlington in May. But it's a different situation for the other drivers further back, and certainly these smaller teams, we're seeing the pinch here where they're having to basically turn these races into practice sessions where they have to make adjustments on different things and just bite the bullet and not really get that much of a run out there. So that was certainly the case with Vinnie Miller. Jeffrey Earnhardt and Alex Labbe ran it out the bottom 5. Labbe, of course, pulling the caution that caused a late race restart in that one. But dramatic bit of a finish there. Noah Gragson going for the top spot in that one, but Chase Briscoe taking the victory. Daniel Hemrick, very aggressive in that race, I thought, when he almost spun out Anthony Alfredo. Kudos to Alfredo for keeping that car straight and not wrecking that one. Certainly the other aggressive driver coming to mind would have to be Ross Chastain after walling his car there trying to catch up to Briscoe, ultimately falling further back in the lineup there. In the 16th spot there. I think he was actually last of the playoff drivers, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Unfortunately that Brandon Brown wasn't able to get a good finish there. He was on the lead lap in about 15th spot, which is about where he's been most of this year. And of course, that was certainly good enough to get him into the playoffs. So kudos to him. Unfortunately, I'm sure he wanted to get a bit better of a performance and pass a couple of these playoff guys. But being able to be ahead of one of them, that's certainly putting him in a better spot than perhaps he would have been otherwise. So kudos to the 68 team and what they're able to do out there. Stephen Parsons, good job by him. Second time in as many weeks. We covered it on our entry list storylines article. SoCal Digital signs up as a new sponsor there on the number 78 car, mentioning again the teammate to Vinnie Miller in the 99 car. So good for Stephen. He seems to be doing a really good job of actually attracting these different sponsors out there. Certainly hoping that the Mike Harmon team is able to do that, since Bailey Curry didn't have any logos on his car. And then Kyle Weatherman had very few of them on there and ended up at the back of the field. Let's see. Our Tommy Joe Martins, certainly good to check in on him. 22nd spot for him after starting 22nd. He's getting closer to getting some of those top 15 runs. Underdogs like him will certainly be ones to watch next week, as the Xfinity Series has a unusual second Talladega race to look forward to, as they continue to close the gap on what their schedule was from before. So we're going to have White Knuckle Weekend is going to take another complexion here at the same time. Oh, Mr. Anti-Ant, I didn't see your super chat there. Thank you so much for that. Good to see emotion in victory lane again in Kurt. Absolutely. One thing you can certainly count on with Kurt Busch, he doesn't take any of these wins for granted. We saw this at Kentucky last year and Bristol before that. He's certainly getting up there. It's hard for me to think of Kurt as an elder statesman in the same sense as maybe a Buddy Baker or a Cale Yarborough to a different generation. But 16 years ago, he won the first Nextel Cup championship, the first playoff race, or the chase, of course, back then in 2004, and wins back in 2002. He had to bump Jimmy Spencer out of the way to win his first race at Bristol back then. And many more wins, many more controversies. Not a straight line, but life is never really a straight line for anybody, is it? Being able to go from one step to the next in his career. But yeah, really good to see emotion out of him. Hate that they couldn't have a crowd there to see him pull off that victory there. But I'm sure the Kurt Busch fans out there are certainly legion and certainly going to be sending plenty of congratulations to him here in the meantime with the victory. So it's a good thing to check out. Tango Wolf 09, thank you. I see your comment there. Well, glad to have you back on board to check out the chat here tonight. Wow, we got 45 people in here. This is great. Fantastic. So certainly good to see everything that they can do here. All right. Well, this brings us to, I guess, the elephant in the room. We have to talk about the Truck Series race. As I tweeted the other day, the old NASCAR headquarters, the room with the blue and white stripes on there, we have retired that now. That was the reason that I wasn't really covering the Truck Series event on Friday and for most of Saturday on that. The effort was, but it's going into good hands for sure. I'm sure that's we had a lot of good memories building up in there. We're kind of transitioning right now. At some point, we'll have a new studio or something that we're going to work out on that, but that's not really something that's in the near future. But we'll work on that in the meantime. And luckily, I got plenty to keep myself occupied between not just things going on with the site and everything from there, but also the new series that's coming up, The Rise of the Field Fillers, which I just downloaded the new render of the video here just during the latter half of this race. So I hope to have some more updates on that very soon for you guys. I guess I'll talk about that as well. But yeah, so we're transitioning pretty much to the next few shows you're going to see are pretty much going to be in this setup here, which is why I wanted to try out the new lapel mic here and kind of put some more, whiz-bang stuff here into this and get this looking a little more professional for you guys out there and getting that going. Let's see here. Let's see. In 2019, Fincham had an Xfinity Supra, but with only one hole in the front. Is it cheaper, or a Camry and a Supra body? Ooh, good question. I don't know on that. I assume they probably just didn't have all the decals on the front. I'm kind of thinking of a James Finch kind of thing where they didn't have all the logos up there. Although Motorsports Business Management is very well tied with Toyota, so I'm sure they have something to do with that. But that would be a different situation there. Yes. Oh, yes. Let's not skip this here. So in the Truck Series, so I mentioned, the reason that you didn't see, this turned out to be the one to skip, at least in my sense there. The last place battle was settled before the race even started. And it did not start, interestingly, when the race's results were actually posted. For the first time in the history of any of NASCAR's top three series, a driver was classified last in a NASCAR point series race for the top three series due to fatigue. And of course, before we go any further, certainly best wishes to Natalie Decker as a result of that. We're still not really hearing, at least not last I heard. She tweeted a bit afterwards that she was going to have some more updates, I guess, on what's going on. Obviously, with under HIPAA and everything, you can't really dig too deep into medical histories and things like that. And it certainly doesn't pay to speculate on such things. I was reporting in the article just what was already she'd already disclosed before. Actually, I think it was just about 10 days ago. She was talking about how she had been dealing with arthritis, which is interesting. It's unfortunate. And awful that she's having to deal with that. But it's also sadly not unusual, even in NASCAR. Todd Peck in the Truck Series has been sponsored by the National Arthritis Foundation in a number of his efforts. And so he's had to deal with that as well. I have no idea how they compensate for that in running in a sport that could be as, really as dangerous in any having any medical condition as stock car racing. But, I guess that's something that they just work with that. But it was interesting reading Decker's tweet about that because she was mentioning that one of the side effects from it was fatigue. So certainly, it would be an accurate description, I guess, if that was actually a reason that that she was not medically cleared to run the race. Not exactly sure. Obviously, she missed a race at Pocono earlier this year. That was the other thing we talked about. She had complications from a surgery that she had last December. Just a lot of difficult things. We've seen this. It kind of reminds you a little bit of Brian Vickers in the latter part of his career, and a lot of things he had to deal with blood clots. Again, different conditions, and again, we talk about this with a lot of things. You never know what people are really dealing with, but certainly hoping that Natalie's doing better. It sounded like from the tone of some of her tweets, maybe she's doing okay, and I anticipate we're going to probably get some more information, but certainly respect her privacy as I'm sure she works out whatever it is, and hopefully we'll see her when the Truck Series returns here, or whenever her next start is, since she's basically part-time running that 44. But on the other aspect of it, the interesting thing was, and Josh Bilicki tweeted this, was that nobody else could actually run Decker's truck because the seat was too small. And Josh Bilicki's a tall guy. I've seen him before, and he certainly, if there was an issue with seat size, Bilicki certainly wouldn't have been an option there. I guess they couldn't get any other driver that would fit in the seat or be able to do it reliably or quickly or anything like that. And so, yeah, you had a situation where the truck didn't start the race, but it passed inspection and it was gridded out there. And I guess once that happens, it can be classified last in a race. It was interesting as a rules standpoint those were the actual required elements. I guess if a car fails inspection or something, you have a Del McCowart in the 1997 Winston Open situation where a car doesn't clear inspection, goes out and tries to start the race, and then isn't allowed to start. I think even that one, he was actually classified last in the race, but maybe that was just because it was an exhibition race versus a points race. Who knows? But in the article as well, and I definitely recommend checking it out, of course, on the NASCAR site if you haven't already. Fatigue is not an unusual reason out. We saw it actually twice last year in the Cup Series. Both Cody Ware at Sears Point and Josh Bilicki, as a matter of fact, in the Bristol night race, were both listed out because of fatigue. In Ware's case, he actually had acute carbon monoxide poisoning and just plain heat exhaustion. And Rick was, his father was certainly understandably very concerned about that at the time, as we all were, as he had to get helped out of the car. And this is, again, something we talked about, of course, really ever since then, highlighting the issue about the passenger side window, which I'm glad NASCAR has revisited and at least changed at some of these tracks so that there's a little bit better air circulation in the cars. It sounded like from some of these reports, and I think Clint Boyer had the problems with it towards the end of today's race, that even under the lights here at night, still having problems with heat and air circulation. And again, even at a top tier team like Stewart-Haas, it's been a problem. So who can imagine what's going on with these other programs? But fatigue not typically classified last for a last place finisher. Closest thing I think would come to the 1992 Pepsi 400, where you had 3 drivers in the bottom 5 all classified out with fatigue, including Richard Petty, who was actually making his last Daytona started on the outside pole. And from the reports that I heard, it was that Petty was actually doing all those pre-race things and stuff. He was standing next to President George Bush Sr. On the podium in his full uniform with the hat and everything, and doing the things he was doing during the Fan Appreciation Tour. But during record-setting heat, I mean, obviously this is a time where the July race at Daytona was run in the mornings. He could go to the beach in the afternoon, which is great. But sometimes it was a lot hotter than one July at Daytona versus another. Could be very difficult. And this race was particularly challenging because you had 108 of the 160 laps run under green right from the start. And so I believe it was Eddie Bierschwal. I think it was Eddie Bierschwal, Richard Petty, and another competitor, I think it was Bobby Gerhart, were all out because of fatigue in the first part of that race, including Bierschwal coming back out trying to help Petty. Talk about relief drivers, and then that not working there. And that's not, of course, the only example. I mean, Kyle Petty, I think, had one at North Wilkesboro where he had heat exhaustion, which is unfortunate because I think he had a top 10 run going there in the 42 car, end up dropping further back. So this is something we really see a lot more in some of these here too. Nicholas Gray, thank you so much for the super chat here again. On to Dega, great finish tonight. Absolutely, have to agree. I see the Mellow Man logo there, so I'm sure you're excited about Ross Chastain getting the full-time ride in the 42 next year and being Kurt's teammate. in the number one car. I think it'll be interesting to see the Ganassi guys get another good run at it, and that'll be something to kind of happen there at the same time. Yeah, right. Well, yeah, Ross Chastain fan, I know you're happy about it too, for sure. But let's see. Jack Garland, I see your comment there. What's my opinion on Ted Musgrave? Oh my goodness, underappreciated talent. I think there's a series on YouTube about near misses, like people that just didn't quite pull off their first win. Excuse me. You could probably put Ted Musgrave in 2 or 3 of those. When Kyle Petty won his last race at Dover in 1995, Ted Musgrave was on him. He was about to catch him in that one, and it didn't quite turn out for him there. That's back when Dover was a real gauntlet. They had just put that thing in concrete, and that's why I guess in our trivia thing a while back, we talked about it being called White Lightning back then. That was a fitting name for that time period there, was just as fast as that track was. Ted Musgrave in 1998 at Martinsville when Bobby Hamilton won his last race, or not his last race, the last race for Morgan McClure Motorsports. Check out the Scene Vault this past week with the team owner there. That's always really entertaining. But at the same time there, yeah, with the Ted Musgrave was really good in that. One of his last runs in the 16 car. But then there's the video series I was mentioning. There was one that was showing one I don't even remember. That was in '97 in Michigan, where Musgrave seemed to have the good run out there and going toe to toe with his teammate Mark Martin. That was a different story there. So yeah, and then of course not even talking about his Truck Series career where he was solid there. But great competitor. Going back to 1991. I mean, you mentioned Bobby Hamilton. That was kind of the throwback. He was actually going against Hamilton for Rookie of the Year in '91 before he got into some of these other teams, and that was interesting too. But yeah, Ted Musgrave was good talent, and a lot of these drivers just don't get talked about that much anymore. Let's see, just make sure I didn't miss anything else up here. Okay, all right. We'll get into trivia here in just a little bit. Before I do, let me just mention again, the rise of the field fillers is now pretty close upon us here. As I mentioned, I was rendering the latest version of the first episode. First episode is going to be about 20 to 25 minutes long from the current version of it. And again, this is going to be the first part of a multi-part series. Next episode, I'm already working on the script of that and getting that going. I have some ideas for some other tie-ins with it to help out the Patreon as well, and kind of build some other stuff here on the side. And I think this is going to be really good. I think this is going to be an interesting story. If we're talking about Kurt Busch in 2004, for example, I mean, this is literally going to be talking about that same time period in the sport. And I think for those of you who maybe are a little bit newer to the sport, or maybe we're just kind of getting into the sport back then, this will either bring back some memories or maybe give you a kind of a new understanding of maybe of a different time in the sport here. One that I definitely remember quite well back in college being entertained by, because it was very much about these smaller teams and underdog performances. And this first episode that's coming up this week, those of you who are in the $5 and up levels in the Livestream, you'll be able to see that before it gets premiered here on this channel here on YouTube. It's going to be very much about the events that led up to that in 2004, kind of setting the stage for it and bringing up some of the figures that ended up being kind of prominent in that. You can see that in both the trailers that are posted on this channel here as well. But I'm very excited to bring that to you. I'm still kind of figuring out when I want to actually premiere it this week. I just want to make sure I kind of tweak it up there and make sure everything is set to go. I'm also kind of streamlining a way to list the videos that are used in it. I'm trying to create like some public, some YouTube playlists, so you can access the videos that are used in it, so you can see those. And if you want to see more content on a subject, kind of check it out that way. I think that'd be a good way to do that versus the old Google Docs list that I've done on some of the previous ones. We'll give that a try and see how that all shakes out. But I think that's going to be interesting to come up here in the same time. Let's see. What was the said head 2? What was the white Dodge Derek Cope tried to make the fall Atlanta race in 2004 with? Number 94. Oh, you're going to have to wait and see. That's going to be one of the ones we're certainly going to be talking about. And you'll see, certainly between the first episode and especially the second episode, you'll get a good flavor of the way I'm going to be approaching this. And it'll certainly be in a way that is going to give you, I believe, if it does what I want it to do, it's going to give you a better understanding of some of these teams and figures that maybe weren't a big story in 2004. But if I was to do LASCAR, if I were to get in a time machine and do LASCAR in 2004 instead of 2009, this is basically what you would get. And so that's kind of my approach to this. So I'm going to be interested to see what you can, what it's going to be with that. But that'll be the situation there. All righty. So yeah. So again, big thanks to all you guys for checking this out and for checking all that out. And if you're interested in the Livestream, again, patreon.com/LASCAR on Brock. So without further ado, we're going to do a few trivia questions here. Go and get your hands on your buzzers, and we'll go ahead and do a few of these to close out the evening. I know it's a Sunday evening here, so we'll probably wrap up before the 9 o'clock hour here to do that. So here we go. The categories, again, as always, are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So go ahead and put your guess in for which, or your pick for which category you want me to do some questions from. And of course, if you have any other questions for me about anything that came up this weekend or anything else we haven't talked about, certainly this year, or this week rather, certainly definitely go ahead and drop it in the comments, and we'll do that for a little bit. All right, we got, let's see, wild card teams. We got a couple for teams. We got a couple for tracks. We got a couple for NASCAR. Hey, Austin Stombras, thanks for joining in here. Oh, Confirmation 07. Thank you so much for the super chat. Let me see your question here. What is the technical difference between an oval car and a road course car? I noticed that vintage road course stock cars sell more than oval cars. Now, I didn't know that second half. I didn't know that the road course cars sell more than oval cars. That's a very good question. My understanding is now, again, there have been differences, of course, between different generations of cars. Generally, a road course car, you're going to want it to be as balanced as possible in terms of the weight distribution. You want the weight to be as close to the middle of the car as possible so that it can throw itself between the left and right-hand turns. Whereas a lot of these cars in the ovals, the weight's going to be put as much to one side as possible. You get extra downforce. The aerodynamics is something a little bit past my experience, but apparently it helps out in that sense. What is also interesting, and I think maybe this has a factor into why they're worth more, is that road course chassis tend to be older than oval chassis. A lot of oval cars, either they get destroyed in a race. You only have to look at tonight to be a perfect example of that, or certainly next week in Talladega. Those tend to be much newer cars, but a road course car, since it's only used about 2 or 3 times a year, you used to have like some teams years ago where they would just kind of park it in the back and it'd be something they just dust off and then use every once in a while. But that would generally be what I'd see with some of these other teams back then. So, maybe that is where the experience comes in with an older chassis. Maybe it's just had more of a history behind it because its use is so much more limited that they're able to just bring it back every once in a while, dust it off, run it at Sears Point and Watkins Glen and the Charlotte Roval, and then not use it again until the following June. You especially see this with the smaller teams. I recall with, I think it was with Rick Ware's team when Chris Cook was driving for him. They said something about the chassis being like 8 or 9 years old, which is bizarre if you think about it, given all the changes that the car, if you think of the way a stock car looked 8 or 9 years ago and had something that had a splitter on it, or not even the next gen or the Gen 6 cars in 2013 kind of thing. You got a very different looking machine now. You wouldn't think it would fit, but that's really kind of the difference, in that. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm seeing other comments in here. Said Ed too, you're right. You have to talk a lot about the brake vents and things like that as well. If you look at much older cars that were running on road courses, they would physically look different because they would have to cut in these huge brake ducts on the front of the cars. This is a great shot. I would see if I could find it. There's one of the Bahari Racing Shop that shows like all these different cars and how different they would look from one track to another. That you have a super speedway car with a big drop snout on it, and then you'd have a short track car with like these big air ducts on it that you'd run at like Martinsville or something. And you have an intermediate one where it'd have a little bit of ducting, but not that much of it. And then like a road course car would be like a beast. Like it would have the ducting, but it would have like the big brakes on it, and you try to just put the very best on it there. There's a picture, I think it was in this history book on the history of stock car racing or some of these teams here. I'm seeing some pictures here already. Kind of get a little bit of an idea of it. This isn't the best picture. There was one where it had like a fleet of them. It had like 8 or 9 of these different cars, and you get a much better idea of it. Bahari Racing is a good example because for many years they ran these plain yellow cars, and so from one car to the next, you could see very clearly what the grid arrangement was. If I can't find it here, I'll see if I can find it some other time. But you can kind of get an idea of it. Let me put this one here. This is one from okay. We got ones from Lynch Mob Racing Images here that are pretty good. You can kind of see some of this. There we go. Actually, this is interesting. Here, check this one out. Here's a link right here where you can actually see the difference between a 1992 chassis and a 1993 Pontiac chassis. The picture at the right there, the car is getting put together as that drop snout restrictor plate kind of nose piece. It looks like they're just upgrading the fleet from 92 to 93. I love those old Pontiacs there. It's like actually kind of a 91 car on the far left there and a 92 in the middle. And then the progression to the 93 Grand Prix, you get a good idea of the differences in those cars. And the difference is almost like that. If you talk about these old road course cars versus the super speedways, that's always interesting. So that's certainly ones to talk about the same way. Let's see. I think we got the picks for the categories. We got a couple for tracks, a couple for wild card. And we're kind of all over the place here. Maybe we'll kind of do a couple here. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. Jeremy Clements won in a 2008 Richard Childress car. Exactly. So that's a perfect example of that. So you can actually see that. But that's always a fun one to do. Let's do the NASCAR category. I don't think we've really done that too much. I know there were a couple picks for that. We'll go ahead and jump into that and do a couple of questions here. All righty. Okay. Here's a good question here. What is the largest weekly motorsports publication in the United States? Now, again, this is the late 90s, so we're not talking internet sites here. What is the largest weekly motorsports publication in the United States? Right. Yeah, Jeremy Clements losing a sponsor. That's a real bummer. I mean, I was wondering what was going on because Mike Harmon's team was running the repairable sponsor starting at the Indy Infield Road Course. Now, I thought that was a strange choice for them, given that they were sponsoring 2 Harmon cars and Clements 1 car. And it's a shame to see him not have the sponsor. I'm worried that maybe it had something to do with him not making the playoffs and losing that spot to Brandon Brown, because it seems like they did that right then, which is the worst time to really do that. But hopefully he can find new sponsorship, because I know he's good for it. Does Clements have a sponsor for Talladega? That'd be good to see. But we'll see. We have. Alrighty, what's the largest weekly motorsports publication in the United States? And the answer is our good buddies Rick Houston and Steve Wade, Winston Cup Scene. There you go. There's one for the Scene Vault podcast right there. It was Larry McClure, I believe, was just on this past week. Well, the Brett Bodine one. I haven't listened to that one yet, but that one sounds good. Winston Cup Scene is indeed the correct answer. Alrighty. Next question. How long is a past champion's provisional good for? Here we go. All right, rules questions. How long is a past champion's provisional good for? Ryan Vargas with a TikTok sponsor. Yes, congratulations to him. Absolutely on that. I mean, I was going to save that more for the Talladega entry list storylines, but absolutely congratulations to Ryan for landing that. Man, oh man, they picked a good candidate for that. If we don't have Spencer Gallagher out there anymore, Ryan Vargas is a good pick there to promote the brand there. So kudos to him for that. How long is a past champion's provisional good for? Past champion's provisional. Yeah, Scene is indeed the correct answer on that last one. All right, forever. Yeah, what does it mean? Yeah, I don't know. Does it mean like how long is it good for after you win the championship? Okay, well, yeah, provisional. Okay, I'm seeing a couple questions about this. I guess this is kind of a thing to bring up here in the same time here. But past champions provisional, this is something that's actually going to kind of come up in the series here. Provisionals were before the current rules in with the charters and everything, guaranteed starting spots that were earned to different teams based on their rankings in previous owner points Or in this case, if they were the most recent past champion that wasn't guaranteed a spot in the race. That was what you had the past champions provisional for. This really kind of took off with Richard Petty and definitely Darrell Waltrip in the late 90s, that you had where you had fields where people would go over to the track and they wanted to see somebody that was going to be kind of towards the end of their career still competing in the race. And this is the same reason that you have people like Bobby Labonte and Terry Labonte having careers much longer than their the end of their careers, because they were able to go to a different team, get a guaranteed spot on the past champions provisional, and start the race. So past champions provisionals have kept a lot of our veteran drivers out there, even in times where they're not driving the best equipment, and even when it's several years after their championship. As far as I know, now I don't know. I mean, that kind of gives away the answer a bit, because I don't think there is a limit to it. I think it's good for any number of years, but I could be wrong about that, because maybe the rule was different in the late 90s. So we'll have to find out if that's going to be different here. All right. But yes, provisionals are basically guaranteed starting spots. It's a mulligan, really, if you think about it in playoff context. So the answer here is life. They are good for life. So the driver's entire career, you can have a driver retire. You can have somebody like Bobby Labonte get into, Tony Stewart's racing series and get back into the Cup Series. If he gets a ride with Spire Motorsports, he's, at least under the late 90s rules, he's still guaranteed a starting spot in the field if he's the most recent past champion not already locked in. That's where you have this other battle here. And that's also a factor why Jeff Green has really pulled away in the NASCAR Xfinity Series standings, because most often he's been the most recent Xfinity champion that doesn't have a guaranteed starting spot. And usually he qualified the car on speed, so he didn't really need to use it. But there were times that he did have to use it, and that has kept him in the field at that much, and that's how you get this many last place finishes for him when he's running a start and park effort. So that was a different deal. What if 44 champions tried to qualify for a race? Well, then you'd have the first 42 champions would probably just get by speed or whatever provisionals or whatever teams that they drive for. And then the 43rd spot would go to whichever the last two remaining champions won the championship most recently. So if it came down between Bobby and Terry Labonte, for example, it would go to Bobby because he won the championship 4 years after Terry did, at least the last time he did. So, yeah, it's an interesting situation. I guess you really have to think about it if you have a team that, a team that actually gets the provisional that, doesn't need it, or if the, driver of the most recent championship drives for a team that's higher up in owner points or further back. I mean, it's all a mess, but that's the way all that works. Yeah, we've only got 33 Cup champions currently. Well, there you go. So it puts it in perspective, and sadly, we don't have all of them with us. So there you go. Alrighty, here we go. Next question. What early NASCAR events had hardtops and convertibles competing together? What early NASCAR events had hardtops and convertibles competing together? Kind of a weird wording of the question. It seems it's kind of hiding the question a little bit here. What early NASCAR events had hardtops and convertibles competing together? Yeah, and rounding out the field, Darrell Waltrip got used to that, 8206. Yeah, exactly. See, I'm always used to Dave Marcus rounds out the field. In the early 90s, that was always what was happening. Richard Petty didn't seem to get last place too often in terms of qualifying. He would usually at least qualify 20th, 25th or something at the end of his career. Not to say you needed it all. Of course, that happened too. But knowing how you had that many drivers that were wanting to see Richard Petty out there, you certainly didn't want people buying T-shirts and then going there and the guy's not there. That's always unfortunate, although that certainly still can happen today, depending on whose gear you're exactly bringing to the speedway there. Doge car, I guess, isn't probably going to come back anytime soon. Alrighty. The Winston Modifieds Convertible Series, Sportsman Series. Yeah, wow, it's everywhere. I mean, I'm not sure exactly where it's going either. But this is the question again. What early NASCAR events had hardtops and convertibles competing together? And the answer, the answer is the sweepstakes. Did anybody guess that? I wouldn't have guessed that. The sweepstakes is the correct answer. Did anybody guess that? I don't think anybody did. Then Jarrett comes back to run Daytona on the past championship. It could happen. Well, there you go. You never know. The sweepstakes. Isn't that what they called the first speed weeks in 1959? Yeah, the sweepstakes. Sweepstakes at Daytona Beach, I guess. That's a horse race. Try again. Yeah. No, there you go. I mean, that's not to say there aren't mistakes made on this thing, but that's kind of the tricky part. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. Next, yeah, that was a bizarre one. Let's see if we get a more normal question here. How many of the top 25 NASCAR Winston Cup drivers of 1997 were born in the 70s? How many of the top 25 NASCAR Winston Cup drivers of 1997 were born in the 70s? That is our next question. How many? We're looking for a number. We do have numbers coming up. 9, 8, 2, 3, 4, 12, 8, 12, 7, 16. Between 0 and 25. How many of the top 25 NASCAR Winston Cup drivers of 1997 were born in the 70s? A little bit of math here for you guys tonight to round out your weekend. Goodness, you got 52 people in here. That's, wow. A lot of Kurt Busch fans out there. Good to know. How many of the top 25 NASCAR Winston Cup drivers of 1997 were born in the 70s? And the answer is 1. 1. I guess it was just Jeff Gordon, I suppose. Who got that? Stephen Callahan? Looks like, were you the first one? Looks like you were right on it. It seemed like it would have been more than that. Yeah, 1. 1. Yeah, there you go. O-N-E. 1. Wow, wouldn't have guessed that one at all either. Okay. Well, it's now, how much does that tell you about the way racing used to be in the late 90s? I mean, if you had people like, you got your Dale Jarrett's, your Dale Earnhardt's, and people born in the 50s and 60s and, 40s, if you're talking about Dave Marcus, and even Herschel McGriff getting back to even further back than that. All right, this is a tricky category. Maybe this one we need to use more often. What emblem did all Winston Cup drivers wear on their left shoulder during 1998? I think Jeff Gordon would be the only one because he was born in 71, right? Or 74? It's either 71 or 74. I always get that confused. What emblem did all Winston Cup drivers wear on their left shoulder during 1998? Oh, you guys got it. You guys got that one. Indeed, the NASCAR 50th anniversary logo, of course. Correct. All right. Here we go. Who averaged 188.354 miles per hour to win NASCAR's record fastest 500-mile race in 1997? Who averaged 188.354 miles per hour to win NASCAR's record fastest 500-mile race in 1997? And oh man, you guys are too good. Mark Martin is indeed the correct answer. Are you guys watching more of Slapshoe's videos? Actually, I guess I mentioned it too in the other one, but I'm sure he got to that one first. Enjoying his Mark Martin series, by the way. I know he did the 98 one already, but I'm interested to see how he remembers 2002 and 2009 because those were interesting seasons to say the least. I can only imagine what they were like for a Martin fan. None of my drivers were ever that close to winning championships, so I never really paid that much attention to the championship battle, except for 2001 because Ricky Rudd got screwed out of that one, but that happens. And then, of course, Jerry Nadeau, never really got that much closer either. Alrighty. What female driver holds the record for the fastest one-way run on Daytona Beach? Okay, let me read that one again. What female driver holds the record for the fastest one-way run on Daytona Beach? I'm glad we did the show on Wednesday because we've already gone more than an hour, and I wouldn't have had any room to talk about all the news that we had this past week. What female driver holds the record for the fastest one-way run on Daytona Beach? That is our next question. Vicky Wood, Guthrie, Sarah Christian, Danica, Janet Wood, Jennifer Jo Cobb, Ethel Mobley, Ethel Falk, Yeah, this is the late 90s, so yeah, you're going to get a different range of questions here. Alrighty, what female driver holds the record for the fastest one-way run, on Daytona Beach? And the answer is Vicky Wood. Vicky Wood. Somebody must have checked. We had actually, Dana Mon, you were right on the button. There you go. Vicky Wood, indeed. Good on you. Todd Benson, you said Wood. There you go. You're good too. Vicky Wood. Excuse me here. Getting a little bit more code red to get over the hump here. Alrighty. Okay, we'll do a couple more here and then wrap up here. What year did NASCAR start the Craftsman Truck Series? What year did NASCAR start the Craftsman Truck Series? Okay, I'm just going to check something else here in the meantime, folks. Okay. No, I'm not seeing any updates there. All right, and the answer, you guys are on it again. The answer is indeed 1995. 95. It's like most of you got that one. We got a couple 96s here, but most of you got there. Indeed, 1995. First exhibition was 94. There you go. But specifically, the first championship season looks like was what they were looking for. Okay, here we go. Who was the first U.S. driver to receive Autosport's Gregor Grant Award? Gregor Grant Award. I'll read it again. Who was the first U.S. driver to receive the Autosport's Gregor Grant Award? I'll look at the screen there so you can see the spelling again. The Gregor, let me get out of the focal length here. There you go. Gregor Grant Award. Who was the first U.S. driver to receive Autosport's Gregor Grant Award? We got ones, I guess, is for Willie T. Ribbs, A.J. Foyt, Mario Andretti, Phil Hill, Earnhardt Sr., Marshall Teague, Slick Johnson. This is tricky. I honestly don't know what it was. Never happened. The Todd Benson, you're swinging for the fences. And the answer is Dale Earnhardt. Dale Sr. Tom Anderson, looks like you were the first one on it. There you go. Confirmation 07, welcome aboard, by the way. You got it there, too. There you go. Got a couple there. Yeah, Dale Earnhardt is the correct answer. Alrighty. And here we go. We're going to do one more question here and then wrap up. I know it's getting, I want to kind of close it out before it gets to be midnight Eastern since it's a Sunday show here. Last question of the night, folks. Last question of the night. What is the minimum number of cars in the field for the Winston? Now, that being the All-Star race, of course. What is the minimum number of cars in the field for the Winston? The minimum number of cars in the field for the Winston All-Star race. The minimum number of cars. Yeah, it's tricky. The minimum, not maximum. The minimum number of cars in the field for the Winston from the late 90s, okay? So there's a one here. Last question of the evening, folks. Thank you so much again, everyone, for tuning in here. What is the minimum number of cars in the field for the Winston? 69, JK. There you go. Technically one. Well, I don't know if it could be one. I don't know. I would imagine it would probably be two. But I mean, I guess you could have a season where you just have two people win all the races. What is the minimum number of cars in the field for the Winston? And the answer is 20. 20. There needs to be at least 20 people, which is bizarre because I think in the first Winston, there were only like 12 people in it or something. I mean, hang on. Let me look that up. 20 is the minimum. Yeah, there were okay, that wasn't introduced until 1989 because there were in the first 4 runnings, there were 12 cars in the first Winston, 10 in the second, 20 in 87, and then 19 in 88. And then no fewer than 20. Oh no, hang on. There were 18 cars in the Winston in 2019, so maybe that's not a rule anymore. Yeah, hold up. Yeah, 20 cars here. That's the last time. Wow, that's the first time I dipped under that. This is what I'm seeing here. I hope that's not a typo. Yeah, 18 cars in the Winston. So how about that? So a 20-car minimum, which must have been introduced at least 1989, it looks like, and was still in effect in the late 90s. So that's an unusual one. Well, how about that? Well, there you go. Austin Somber is am I on Instagram or Facebook? I'm on Facebook. You can find me that way. I don't really use the page that much, except to really promote the articles. So don't do too much there. Most of my stuff I do on Twitter. But I will wrap up the show from here because I know it's late on that. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Again, congratulations to Kurt Busch. Pending the results from technical infractions or lack thereof, we'll have the article on Chad Fincham for you later tonight. Check out the website, lastcar.info. We have the reviews for the Xfinity and Truck Series last place finishers already. If you want to check out more of my tweets, check out at LastCar on Brock. If you want some bonus content or some LastCar merch, check out patreon.com/LastCar on Brock. And of course, stay tuned this week for the first episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. Those of you in the Lastreon $5 and up will be able to see that video first. Other than that, it will be premiered on this channel today, this week, and we will do, of course, updates on that as soon as they're available. In the meantime, stay tuned for more content on this. Our next show will be after White Knuckle Weekend at Talladega this weekend. I hope you have a wonderful week, everyone. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next week, and we'll talk some more racing. And yeah, thank you, everyone, for joining in. Hope to see you next time. All right. So have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you next time.